The Director of the Fiji Broadcasting Commission, my friend Mr. Hemendra Nagin, I'm sure I can get some discount from him when he next sends me the bill. The Chief Executive Officer of the Fiji Broadcasting Commission, Mr. Tarun Patel, the Honorable Assistant Minister for Information, Ali Kimbia, friends from overseas, heads of media organizations, editors, ladies and gentlemen. Bula Vinaka Namaste and good morning to you all. It is my distinct honor to share some thoughts with you today at the Pacific Media Partnership Conference. Some of you in this room may know of my long-standing interest in and involvement with the media, both through my writings in local dailies and my scholarly contributions, including co-editing 2 books and a journal on media and development in the Pacific with my friend Professor Shailendra Singh, who I understand is here as well. For the coalition government of Fiji, which I am very proud to be part of, hosting this important event on our shores is especially meaningful. We are unequivocally committed to democracy and freedom. In 2023, the well-known civil liberties organization, Freedom House, ranked Fiji the most improved country in the world for civil liberties as a result of a change in government. And that is no accident. In opposition, we had promised the people of Fiji that they would be free, and we have kept that promise. So one of our first acts in government was to repeal the oppressive Media Industry Development Act, and we also ended the business of exclusive government contracts to selected media fabrics. As a government, we are criticized for a lot of things, both in mainstream and social media. Some of that criticism is justified, and we are far from a perfect government. Some of it we feel is a bit unfair, but I suppose all governments feel that way sometimes. However, I want to assure people of one thing. As a political group, all the parties in the coalition are strongly committed to the freedom of Fiji's people, including freedom of expression. And if we are sometimes annoyed by the things people say, we perfectly understand that it is the price we pay for being in power. And to those who criticize us, I say, keep holding us to account. But remember how you became free enough and informed enough to do that. The newspapers you read, the TV news that you view, they are all free to tell you whatever news they uncover. And those freedoms come to you only after a new government came into office at the beginning of 2023. Who can forget the days when the former Fiji Sun editors waited every afternoon to be told by the government what the following day's headline would be? The price for their subservience was a multi-million-dollar exclusive advertising contract. All the government business and all the business of government owned companies and statutory bodies, all dictated to by the government. Even the Fiji Broadcasting Commission, the government-owned broadcaster, now regularly runs news that is critical of the government. Think back 3 years ago, when a government stooge controlled FBC and everything that went through its newsroom. These and those days are over. This government will not interfere into FBC's independence. Only last week, the Fiji Times finally freed from the burden of an appeal against its acquittal for sedition in 2018. And as the esteemed editor of the Fiji Times described it last week, that prosecution in 2017 was an act of vengeance by the Bainimarama government against one of the last independent media voices to survive under their rule. And I want to congratulate Fred Wesley and his entire team at that time for standing up to those bullies. And this freedom of expression operates in a wider environment of freedom. Our institutions are independent, open to scrutiny, even as some of them face internal and external challenges. Controversies are currently swelling over the offices of the Director of Public Prosecutions and FICAC. Indeed, I am personally accused of wrongdoing in the FICAC saga. In the controversy of the Director of Public Prosecutions, a panel of judges issued a ruling clearing him of wrongdoing. In the FICAC controversy, the Supreme Court judge is now inquiring into it and will issue a public report. These inquiries take place because we now have an independent judiciary. Who can imagine this occurring under the previous government? When the cabinet holds a meeting, our Prime Minister now tells the country about the matters it discussed. Most Fiji journalists would agree that he makes time for the news media and is almost always very accessible to them. And sometimes I tell the Honorable Prime Minister that in my view he is too accessible. And as you know, the government is now engaged in a public consultation on freedom of information laws, which should be of something that would be of great interest to all of Fiji's news media organizations. To suppress the media, as the previous government did in a deliberate and sustained way, is to suppress debate and discussion, stifle ideas, and thus to block the progress and development. This is the kind of state interference in newsrooms through the management of news organizations that one time saw Fiji ranked the lowest of Pacific Island nations of Samoa, Tonga, and Papua New Guinea in media freedom in a report released by Reporters Without Borders. That, my friends, is now history. Whatever laws are reviewed or enacted, this coalition government will never even attempt to muzzle the media. Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, and I quote, "Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through the media regardless of frontiers. This freedom and right is reposed in the people, which the state and politicians must respect at all times," unquote. A free, fair, and unregulated media is absolutely vital for true and genuine democracy and to amplify the voices of not only government, but also the opposition without fear. Many young people in this country today who grew up in the culture of the 2006 coup and its aftermath still believe that asking questions can lead you into trouble. Many employers and academics and activists now warn me that as a result of this, there is lack of critical thinking in our next generation. Yet, without that critical thinking, we will not be able to resolve our pressing national problems, modernize antiquated practices, and challenge wrongdoers, including those in positions of power. History shows that democratic transitions are not without difficulties. Countries like Nigeria and Ghana have experienced the complexities of moving from restrictive media environments to greater press freedom. These are scenarios for reflection for all of us and also well documented in the academic literature. However, the learning from the past is also being challenged by the realities of the present. These include the battle for hearts and minds and advertisers between mainstream and the social media. This, I know, is a major challenge for mainstream media organizations of the kind represented at this conference. Media audiences are easily distracted to alternative channels of information, often for reasons of cost and convenience. Increasingly, however, it is because many have a misplaced belief that reading and seeing only the information that conforms to their worldviews is the way to access critical information. I know much has been written about mainstream media and how it must gain public trust. And this is particularly true in societies like ours, emerging from an environment in which many were deeply cynical of mainstream media and whether or not it had a hidden agenda. Mainstream media is challenged by a set of rules which do not apply to social media. The requirement to be accountable under national laws, media and business, employment and environmental regulations, and laws relating to defamation and privacy, as well as to follow ethical standards of journalism. None of these laws, of course, apply to bloggers or so-called activists who push often their half-baked ideas onto others from their keyboards. And new challenges are emerging every day, including state-sponsored disinformation deliberately aimed at destabilizing the democratic societies of other countries. As our Pacific Islands too become geostrategic targets, and they are increasingly, for big power gatemanship, we must equip ourselves as best as we can to deal with these new issues, just as we must deal with artificial intelligence-driven robots, dealing dishonestly with information to meet commercial or other goals which threaten our people's livelihoods and rights. So in this increasingly challenging environment, I do see a role for governments, particularly in public service broadcasting. This can be government's contribution to try to rebalance the increasingly unbalanced media environment for responsible and accountable media outlets. Unfortunately, in Fiji, for many years, the term public broadcasting was a euphemism for a gross abuse of public funds for political propagandizing. And going forward, we must find ways to ensure the best possible governance of public broadcasting funds to ensure that these bad practices do not happen again. On our part, the government allocated a total of 10.4 million funding in the last budget for public service broadcast, and already 2 private media organizations also have received some portion of those grants. And I also feel that development partners may also consider funding public service broadcasts and publications. All these issues are ones on which I know the government would further welcome your views and input. And I'm pleased that sessions which broadly accept some of these themes are part of the program. I note the emphasis on the program on the support that the media can provide in disaster warnings and resilience. And these are critical issues that they remind us that the work of strong free media organizations protected by and not dictated by national governments can sometimes mean the difference between life and death. And these are real life issues that have a direct impact on the welfare of our people. With regard to media training, as an academic, it will not surprise you that I firmly believe that learning never stops. And media houses must look beyond daily routines and newsroom deadlines, desk rosters to reflect on and advance the industry and profession. Consequently, research into the media in Fiji and the Pacific is essential to inform and improve journalism. And this is why conferences like this are invaluable. They provide a platform to share ideas, reflect on media practices, and engage in debates. I've always enjoyed international conferences myself because they expose us to global perspectives, allow us to learn from other nations, and it is crucial to look beyond our own shores for ideas and inspiration. And that is why our government proudly supports this event. It is an investment in our future. Our government is not only a strong advocate for media freedom, but also for academic freedom and knowledge creation. Another of the early actions of our government was to restore the University of the South Pacific's annual Government of Fiji grant funding, which the previous government had halted. And this anti-USP and anti-intellectual, anti-academic freedom, driven by political motives and the then government's personal dislike of those who disagreed with it, I consider one of the most egregious attacks on academia, and with far-reaching consequences not just for Fiji, but for the entire region. The restoration of the USP grant has revitalized the university's academic culture, and I know through it our government supported the USP journalism programs and its international media conference in July last year. I was, of course, honored to be a speaker at that event where we launched another of our book, Waves of Change, Media, Peace and Development in the Pacific. This is a bit of an advertisement that I co-edited with some esteemed academic colleagues, including Professor Shailendra Singh. And a chapter I co-authored is titled Peace Journalism and Conflict Reporting in Fragile Pacific Societies, Challenges and Opportunities. It argues that journalism in the Pacific region must be informed by the national and regional context, while taking a critical look at alternative reporting frameworks, such as conflict-sensitive reporting, to exist alongside and balance the media's watchdog role, which is important in the public interest, including holding leaders to account. The USP journalism program is the only institution in the Pacific conducting regular research on Pacific media, which addresses, in my view, a major gap in international standing journalism cultures around the world. And I want to commend the program for its sterling efforts and for its service to journalism scholarship in the region. So I hope over the next few days of your deliberations, reflections on some of the themes may be useful. And I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the government and the people of Fiji to welcome especially our overseas delegates. I know that many of you would have been here before, but if you are here for the first time, a very special welcome. And I hope that you will have time to see a little bit of Fiji. And I want to wish you all a very productive deliberations during this Pacific Media Partnership Conference. Vinaka Vakalevu, Dhanyawad, and thank you.